Welcome back. This is module 2 of lecture 7, and this is where we will use the information we just got and implement undo and redo in our application. So you usually have to create a new NS undo manager, but since we created a document-based application last time, we already have NS undo manager in NS document, so we'll just take advantage of that. Before we go on, we have to understand something. Remember key value coding concept, the idea of getting the value of some variable and setting the value for some variable using its name. Remember last time it sounded kind of obvious and stupid, but now we will actually get into it and see how this helps us do undos. Now, when you design your class and you create a new variable, you create instance variables, you have one of 4 possible purposes for that variable. It could be a simple attribute. It could be something which is represented by a simple data type, like a number, a string. So in our example last time, the person had a name and a race. That is just a string and a number. That is a simple attribute. You could also have a variable which is to one relationship, meaning it's a complex attribute. It's something that still points to something single, but that something single is not just a value, it's another object. It's a pointer to another place in your application. You could also have a variable that represents ordered to-many relationship, meaning you have an array, for example, which is a set of pointers to another objects. Those objects could be simple or complex, but you have this ordered relationships in your application represented by a single variable. And in the same way, you can have a single variable that is to many relationships, meaning it's the same as array, and you could have some order, but it's not inherited in your application. So remember last time we were discussing NS set or NS mutable set, and that is the data type for sets, unordered collection of things. So those are 4 possible purposes for your instance variable in a class. We discussed how to use key value coding for simple attributes and those that represent to one relationship. So for those attributes that you use to point to single thing. The key value coding looks for accessors for those get value and set value things and uses them. And if we create accessors for to many relationships, then that accessor will be used if a value being changed or set if we get the value or set the value using key VC. So here's an example. Suppose you have a playlist, and this is just an object that represents a playlist. And of course, in the playlist, you have maybe an array of songs, and song is another object. So you have an NS mutable array. If we want to use key value coding and key value observing for manipulating the array, we ask the playlist for mutable array value for key. This is the name of the method. And get back the proxy object. And proxy object is something that will represent the thing that we ask for. So here's an example. We create a new object and we don't have a class for it, so we say ID array proxy, and we ask the playlist for mutable array value for key songs. We know that we have this array called songs, but instead of just getting that array, we are getting the array value for this key. And the key is of course the name of the variable. We know that the name is songs. And we get another object in return. We don't get the array itself. We get the array proxy, which is like an agent for that array. And after, if we want to talk to this array, we have to talk to his agent first. And the agent will talk to the array and get something for us. So the next step, we want to get the number of songs in our array. So I asking my array proxy count, and count is a simple method in array itself, but this is not an array, this is the array proxy. So what happens is, if I ask for count, the proxy object, this array proxy, will ask the playlist, because this is a proxy from this playlist, if it has a count of songs method. And this is not just in this example, this is the name that will be used if I ask for count and the array is songs. This name will be generated, count of songs. So if playlist does have this method, then this method obviously will be called and we will get back the result, something that this method returns. If there is no such method, the playlist will get the array of songs, the actual array, and ask the array for its count. And again, the naming the method count of songs is not just a convention. This is the key value coding mechanism, and this name is generated by that mechanism. So if you had not songs but books and you asked for min, then the method that will be called first will be min of books. So if we want to get the number of songs in this example, we might want to implement this method in our playlist, knowing that it will be asked through the array object. So this is how it works. We have an array proxy, so we got that mutable array value for key songs, and we get the proxy for that array. And asking it for a count is the same as asking the playlist for count of songs, because this will just call this. And asking the proxy of object at index 5 will be exactly the same as asking the playlist and calling it method object in songs at index 5, if this method exists, of course. And the same thing with everything else. If we want to insert object, this is the same as asking the playlist to insert object in songs at index. So if we're using key value coding, we could just implement those methods, because we know what those names will be, because we know the name of the messages that will be sent, and we know the name of the object of the array in this example that we have. So we can construct those methods before, and those methods will be called every time something gets or tries to get an object from that array, or tries to get the count of that array, or tries to remove something from that array. So we can implement methods for all those things that will be called using key value coding. So it's exactly the same for those relationships that are unordered. So if we have an NS set of, in this example, students, it's exactly the same, but of course those methods that are possible for set will be called. Something like get object at index is not possible because set doesn't have indices. But the idea is the same, and the naming, the construction of the names of the methods is the same. This is really, really important. This is a powerful mechanism, and you have to understand this. So in this picture, you could see, so we have the playlist, and first thing, we got the proxy for this array of the playlist. So we have now this proxy, and we're talking to this proxy. We don't talk to the playlist, or we don't talk to the mutable array. We ask the proxy for count, and that will first check if the playlist has count of songs, because count is the name and songs is the name. We could, of course, call the playlist itself and ask it for count of songs. This is okay. And if it doesn't, then it will check the array of that name and ask that array for count. And exactly the same here. Okay, so how to use this in our application? We have an array controller. Let's just go back to the application. Actually, we have this array controller. and we've bounded content array to the employees array in our document. So we use this array controller to connect to the actual data, to connect to the array of employees in our document. Array controller uses key value coding to add and remove person objects. So we have this application and we can add and remove objects, meaning employees. What happens behind the curtains when we click that button, and remember we bound to this method add and this method remove to those buttons on the interface, every time those methods are called, key value coding is used to get that array, not actually the array, but get the proxy for that array in our application and add the value or remove the value. So if we want something to happen when this happens, if we want something to happen when a new object is added or an object is removed, all we have to do is override those methods, or actually create those methods that I just explained. We know the names, so we can create those methods and do something in those methods what we want to do. The thing we want to do is add inverse messages to the undo manager. So this is what we're going to do. First, let's go to our header file of the document. Here, we want to use import. Want to use the person class. So let's import person header file. We have autocomplete. Now we want to add two methods. First is insert object in employees at index. And this is not the name I come up with. This is the name that is generated and will be expected by key value coding. So it will be void function, insert object of class person, in employees at index. And the index is NSU integer. And the name is index. The error is expected after prototype, yeah, like this. And the other one is, of course, to remove. Remove object from employees at index. NSU integer index. So I know the name of this object, of this method, because I know that my mutable array is employees. So this is why it's employees here and here. Okay. Now, of course, we have to implement those. Let's go to my document.m implementation. And let's go back. You can see here we have the warning incomplete implementation, meaning we don't have those two methods implemented, which we will fix. Okay, first is insert object. We have autocomplete. This is nice. And like this. As I said, we have an NS undo manager, but we have it in ourselves. Let's get it using NS. Oops. Let's create a new one. I mean a new pointer, of course, but use our undo manager what we have in self. And now let's give it the inverse of what we're doing. We are inserting, so we want to give it the remove method as something to be put in undo stack. So let's call undo. Prepare with invocation target self. We want to do it on ourselves. And the name of that function will be remove object from employees at index. Of course, we have the same name index. Now, I want to say this. If I'm is undoing, I want to set the name of that action so that it is updated in our menu. So let's say undo, set action name, and just say add person. So we inserted a new person, and if I want to undo it, the menu will say undo add person. This is all fine, but we should not forget to actually do it. Now we should remove the person. Oh, I'm sorry, add the person. So employees, insert object, P at index. Okay, one ready, one to go. Now, almost the same method. So this is bad, but I'll just copy and paste. No, there are always mistakes if I do it. So I say remove object from employees at index, and I want to create a new person, because if I want to save something, if I remove a person and then want to undo, I have to save this person so I can get back to it. So I'll get that person that we about to remove from our array, because we know the index of that person. So now I want to tell the undo manager, please. Oh yeah, I have to get the undo manager like this as well. So this is okay to copy paste. So undo, prepare, invocation with target self. And now we have to say insert object. So that the name of the method that we just created. Insert object P, the person we just saved from dying, and index. So I'll just copy and paste this as well and say this would be remove person. So if I remove this person, I want the menu say undo remove person. And of course, removing itself. Employees, remove objects at index. So this is it. Let's run. If I click add new, and go to edit, I have this undo add person. If I click it, we'll undo. No, we have an exception. So let's see. Uncode exception was raised. Insert object called. Okay, well, something is wrong. Let's just check. Okay, insert object in employees at index, undo, prepare, remove from employees at index. Index is undoing, and person at index. Oh yeah. When I was escape typing here, it said insert object at index, but actually I wanted to call this insert object in employees at index. This is the name that should do it. Let's run this again. Okay, add new, edit, undo, undone. and I can redo, this will add it back again. I can do multiple things and like this. And I have Command Shift Z, this will redo. So I can do undo, redos, really nice. Okay, it works. Actually, this is not all I wanted to do. Adding and removing is fine, but this was an easy part. The tricky part is if I want to undo and redo all the changes that were done here, because if I type something here, this won't be saved. And if I undo, only the insertion and deletion will be saved. So I just lost that. Okay, the next module will talk about how to do that.